Now let's have a quick look of how we created this RPA flow using the Player Service Manager. So let's go back to our scheme and see what we have here. We have the mail that was being sent to the Oracle Player Service Manager. Inside that we have an RPA process that was invoked. This RPA process interacts with the EBS system to analyze this CSV file that was sent as an attachment and sent and insert information into the EBS system. And by the end of it, it sent a confirmation mail. So let's start by explaining how we implement this step. I mean, how the Oracle Player Service Manager interacts with the EBS system. This is done by creating what we call services. Services are APIs that we create inside the Service Manager. They record flows on the EBS system, and then we can replay them and invoke them as REST APIs to do the flow that was recorded. Let's see how this works. To record a service that interacts with the EBS Oracle system, we will just open our Service Manager. This is our Service Manager. I'll go to the Services section, and then I will click on the Forms service. This is to create a new form service. We have few recorders on the Oracle Player Service Manager. For that part, since this is a Forms application, we will use the Form Service Recorder. So I'll just press on it, and let's give it a name for this service. And now I need to put here the URL of the forms that needs to be opened. So I have it here. I'll copy it from here. I'll put it here on the URL field and press the begin button. This will invoke the Service Manager recorder. You can see it running behind the applet. Now it opens the applet. And we can just start to do the flow that we want to record. Our recorder is here on the back. It's listening to all the events and to all the actions that we are doing. And all we need to do is just to simulate the flow. So I'll enter the login credentials, and automatically each input field that I'm typing into the Oracle EBS system will become an input field for the service that we are creating, the one that we will be able to invoke as a REST API and that will execute the flow on the Oracle EBS. So I'll enter the credential. This will make them input fields, and I will open the journals module where I can enter new journals. I'll press on new journal to create a new one. I'll skip the journal name. It will be generated automatically. I will put some input here. Let's call it demo description. I'll press tab. This will generate the new journal name. And if I want to capture the new name that was just generated and export it and extract it as an output parameter, all I need to do is just to focus on the field, to click on it, and this will make it an output parameter for the service. So I've just created the journal entry, and now let's add one line. I'll put here one of the accounts that exist in our system. Put here something on the debit. I'll change here something so it will be catched as an input. And let's add another line. Let's put a different account name here, account number, sorry. And now I will put the credit so it will be balanced. And that's it. And now I will just press the save button. And I want to show you that once I'm pressing the save button, we will get here a message saying transaction complete, FRM 4400. And it's important for us to see it because we will use it later. And now I'll get back to our recorder and I'll press the save and exit button because I'm done with recording this service. And now it will generate me a new service, a new API inside the service manager, which I can invoke later and rerun the flow with my inputs. Let's see it. Here it is. So this was the service that was created. Let's go here to the input sections. You can see here the credentials. You can see here the description of the journal that we added, and you can see here the lines that we added to this journal. And as the output, you can see the journal name that was created, exactly like I've explained. And now I'll just press the create service. And we are ready to test it. So what we need to do, what we can do is just press here the test button. This API was created. This is the URL of the service that can invoke from any REST client. It should be passed, it should be executed with the proper input parameters, and we can test it just from here. We have a REST client integrated in our tools, so we can test the new services. So I'll just press here the test button. And I can change any of the parameters here. Let's change the demo description to demo description 1. And let's change here the numbers to 200. And press the run test. This will invoke the API, the REST API, will play the scenario on the Oracle EBS. As you can see, it returned with success status, and we got back the name of the new journal that was created. We also get here all the statuses that we got from the status bar inside the Oracle EBS. So let's get back here to the Oracle EBS and let's look for this new journal that we just created and see if it was actually created. So I'll put it here, press the find, and here it is. Let's review the journal, and you can see here is the new descriptions that we have added. Here are the new numbers, the new totals that we have added. So this service was executed again with the new inputs and inserted the lines into our EBS system. So this completes the demo of how we implement this step on our creating the EBS system. So with our interacting with the EBS system. So in this way I can create any number of services that I want to manipulate the EBS system. And now let's see how we create the RPA flow that actually creates the full logic of this flow. So now let's see how I create the RPA process that invokes all the different services to do the full flow of this example of adding journal lines to our EBS system. For that, we'll get to a section in the Service Manager called Automation RPA, and here on the Processes tab we will press the plus sign to create a new RPA process. This is how the editor of our RPAs looks like. It's built out of two panes. The left one is a visual editor where I add the steps, and the right one is the properties of the step that I'm currently focused on. So I'm starting with the root node, and the first thing I will do is just give a name for this new RPA. Let's call it demo.gl, and now let's start to build this RPA. So what we want to do is to read a CSV file, loop over its lines, and then for each line insert it to our EBS system as a journal file. So I'll press here the plus sign, and as you can see, I can add here different types of building blocks. I can invoke a service, I can invoke any REST APIs that I have, I can add a condition, send mail, manipulate files, loop over things, and even add a JavaScript block with any business logic that I have. What I would like to do now is to loop over the CSV file. So I will add here a loop, and we have different types of loop. I will choose the CSV file loop, and I will upload to my system the CSV file that I'm working on, the one that I've shown you before, this one with the lines. And here I can say that the first line is a header line, because as you can see in our CSV loop, the first line is headers, and the data comes only for the second line. And now this will loop over the lines. And what I want to do inside the loop I want to start and insert the lines to the system. But I have two options here, because the first line would need also to create the header of this journal entry. So I have a special line, the first line, and then all the other lines. So for that, I've created two services. One that handles the creation of the first line, the first header, the first entry of the journal header, and then adds the first line, and then another service adds an additional line to a previously created journal entry. So how would I do that? I will add here a condition, and I will say that if this is the first line. How do I do that? I'm saying I want to add here a parameter from the loop, the previous step, and the parameter would be the row number. So I'm saying if the row number equals to 0, which is the first line, then I want to add the service that creates the whole entry, the header, and the first line. This is the service that I've created for it. Now if I stand on it, you can see all the input parameters of this service. And what do I have here? I have here the journal description. So I'll leave it as an input parameter for the whole process. For each of these inputs, I can decide to leave it as process input, or to attach a value for it from previous step, or to add some static text. So for this one, I will leave it as a process input. And then for the line number, which is the first line that I'm adding, this one I want to take from the CSV file. So I'll press here, I'll say select value from a previous step. My previous step will be the loop that goes over the CSV file. And here you can see the columns of the CSV file. So I'm saying the line number would be the value in the line num column. I'll select this. And the account, no, sorry, we are on the description. The description will be the description column. And the credit would be the credit column. And the debit would be the debit column. And so on. Let's do it quickly. This is the account. And we also have the credentials, which I don't need to change. I'll leave it as process parameters. And this completes the adding of the header, the creating of the journal header and the adding of the first line. And to add any other line, I would put it here on the left side of the condition. And for that I have another service that only adds a line. Here it is. This one only has the details of the line, so I'll hook it to the CSV file parameters in the same way. I'll take it from here like I've done before. I'll do it quickly. It would be the debit and the description. So now I have both services wired to the values that come from the CSV file, and the last thing I want to do when I get out of the loop is I want to add a service that actually presses the save button that completes the process on the EBS system. So I'll just put here a service that I've created that only presses the save button. That's all it does. And I want to end it with sending a confirmation mail. So I'll just add here a send mail step. And here on the recipient address, I want to send it to the one who sent me the mail, the original mail. And I want to put some subject in it. So let's see how I do that. To have it as, to get the information of who sent me, I need to make it an input parameter of this process. So what I'll do is I'll add here at the beginning of the step, I'll add here a block. I'll call it JavaScript block, I'll call it inputs, and just add an input parameter here, which I will call sender. And on the email, I'll say that I want this recipient address to be taken from the inputs of this process. And if I'll go here to the root, I'll see here that I have an output parameter. This output parameter came back from this service, the one that created the journal header. So I want to make it also the process output. I want to make it visible, and I also want to return it on the subject line of the confirmation lane, of the confirmation mail. So I'll said journal was created with the name, and I'll add here the output parameter that I've just returned from the create main. So this would be the output parameter, and basically I'm done. This is the flow that will do the functionality that I needed for my RPA. So this is how I create the RPA flow. And I'll just save it. And of course I can, before actually connecting it to an email, I can test it. So we have here a test button. I can just press the test here, and this will invoke the RPA, and hopefully will get us a good result. Let's see what we have here. Okay, let's see what we have missed. Okay, I know we have here a username and a password. We need to put some default values here because we didn't enter the actual credentials. So we will get here, we will see here the parameters that we need to enter, and I'll put here the values for the credentials. This is why it failed. I will also put here some description. Let's call it demo 2. And never mind the sender. Oh, let's put here a sender as well. Let's see what's the name of our integration. It will be orpair.integration. Okay, so let's put here .com as a default value, and now we can save it again and run it. Let's see what happens this time. And this time it succeeded. We can see here that 7 records were created, and we should also see here the output. Why we don't see the output? Let's see. Oh, it was become not visible again, so let's make it visible and let's run it again so we can see the name of the new journal. Let's run it again. So this is how easy it is to create the RPA flow, test it, and see the results. And now we get the name of the new journal that was just created. So our RPA flow is ready. And now the last thing we need to do is to connect it to an email trigger. So how do we do that? We'll get out of this editor. And here on the automation section, we also have the triggers tab. And what we need here is to add what we are calling an email trigger. So we will add an email trigger. We will select the service that we have just created. GL. What was the name of the service that we just created? Let's see. Oh, it was demo GL. Okay, so let's add an email service. Let's select the demo GL. Here it is. So we say we want an email trigger that will invoke the demo GL. Let's create it. And now I need to configure this email trigger. I need to add some filtering values to the template of the email. So when it is sent to our server, it will know to attach this email to specific RPA. So I can filter it by whoever is sending it, and I can also put here on the subject some template that will mark to our server that this email is connected to this RPA service and should be invoked. So let's say I put here something like create new journal with description of, and I can put here a parameter and now I can take this parameter, and as you can see here on the bottom, I see here all the input of my process, and one of them is the journal description. So instead of having a default value, I can say I want to take this value from the subject that is being sent. So each email that will have this description of this subject, it will be analyzed. The Aurora Player Service Manager will take the description from these two quotes and will send them as the input to our RPA. Okay, let's see what else we need to do. We want this email to have an attachment, a CSV file, so we will say that it has an attachment. And we want also that the sender here for the confirmation mail will be the one who sent this mail. So we have a special parameter here that says who was the from, and this will be sent as the sender for this confirmation mail. So it will send it back to the sender. And let's save it. And I see that something is missing here because I want this attachment that is sent to the mail to be the CSV file that is analyzed by the RPA, and I don't see it as an input parameter here. So I'll save it. This is because I didn't expose it as an input parameter. So I'll go back to my RPA. Let's open it again. And here on the loop, we just uploaded it and we didn't mark it as process input. So I'll mark it as process input, which means that I can get it from the outside and save it again. So now it is exposed as an input. And when I'll get back to my trigger, I can say Here it is, the new input parameter. This is the file. I can say that I want to take the attachment. This is a special parameter of the attachment, that the attachment from the mail will be sent as the CSV file that needs to be processed. And that's it. Now, once I will be saving it, it will become one of the triggers in my system. As you can see here, it is with status enable. I can enable or disable triggers, but once it is there, any email that I will send that match this condition, this template, will invoke this RPA, will take the inputs from the email, send it to the RPA, and will create the new journal lines inside the EBS system, as we demoed at the beginning of this session. So basically that's it. Thank you very much for your attention.